Step 3 of the 6 strategies to develop a well-managed and disciplined class is to incorporate efficient management skills, found on page 109. To move and organize students quickly and efficiently, you must choose techniques that the students accept and understand and can do repeatedly. When you teach class management skills, it's just like teaching physical skills. The students need to practice it through repetition until it becomes second nature to them. Instead of coming up with a derogatory remark to the students because they're being careless and so forth, you might say something as simple as, "It appears you've forgotten how to freeze quickly, so let's practice." And if that means you have to stop what you're doing and not continue on with your lesson, take that minute to stop and show them or have them practice how to freeze to make sure there's 100% compliance. You need to expect 100% compliance. So what's our first way to incorporate efficient management skills? We need to deliver instructions efficiently. If the students are not listening when you're giving instructions, little learning is going to occur. We deliver instructions in small doses. We want them to focus on 1 or 2 key points at a time. We want to make sure, and this is what you need to know, that your instructional episodes or intervals are 20 to 30 seconds long. 20 to 30 seconds long. So a very effective approach is to alternate short instructional episodes with activities, and then come back to short instructional episodes, and then the kids start moving again and do it. That is a very good practice to do. We also want to minimize the amount of content per instruction. That helps to eliminate frustration on the student's part, and it allows them to focus on what you just stated, whatever your goals were. Now, here it is, ladies, telling the students when before what. This is where they teach it in Chapter 6, and this is what I've been implementing all semester long. But here it is in your book on page 110. And they state an effective way to implement when before what is to use a keyword such like begin or start. When I say start, or you can choose when I say begin, or when I blow the whistle once, you will blah, 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 blah. And you know how I am. I'm very specific, or I'm wanting you to be specific on the what part of this statement. So when before what? A second way to incorporate efficient management skills is to stop and start your class consistently. I want you to know, you do not want to use a variety of ways to stop and start your class. You want to be consistent in what you use. Many teachers like to have students assume a specific position, like the freeze position when you're in hands on knees, and that way you can see them. But what I want you to know, using both an audio signal and a visual signal is very effective in case the students couldn't hear you for some reason. And here's where they state on page 111, top of page 111. You need to expect 100% compliance when these students are asked to stop. If only some of them stop and listen, the class morale degenerates. The students tend to wonder why they have to stop because you're not making them stop. So expect 100% compliance. Your third way to incorporate efficient management skills is to move the students into groups quickly and into their formations quickly. We have some simple techniques to use, but any type of grouping technique should require students to match up with someone near them as opposed to them running and looking for their best friend. So what's one of the first options they talk about in the book? Finding your partners toe-to-toe. This is very similar to our whistle mixer. Instead of saying whistle mixer, you can have them get toe to toe. Dividing, and you need to know these things, by the way. Finding partners toe to toe. How do you divide a class in half into two equal groups? I want you to know you have to have the students get toe to toe with a partner. I want you to know creating small groups. We've learned whistle mixer works very well. So whistle mixer, I don't feel like I need to explain that. And then I also want you to know how can you create circles or single file lines. An effective technique is for the moving a class into single file lines is to have the students run randomly in the area like you do for whistle mixer, skip or hop or jump, and then on signal to fall in. What does that mean? I want you to know they're going to move toward the perimeter of the area if that's what you want them to form a circle, or they're going to fall into a line behind someone. I've never really stressed this too much, but this is a good way in order for you to get them into circles or single file lines. We can also use squads to expedite class organization. This helps some teachers manage a class very effectively. Why would you want to use squads? It offers a place for the students to meet, and it can also keep certain students from sitting with each other. And you can group students into prearranged teams depending on their ability. And it can also help teachers learn student names. So on page 112, they talk about some guidelines for using squads to maximize teaching effectiveness. Number one, as you see up here, make sure when you're using groups and whatnot, you avoid embarrassment. You want to make sure to not use the method of picking two leaders to choose the teams. The most inapt student is the one that's going to be chosen last. If you use this method of two leaders to choose the teams, pick the two students that are usually the last ones chosen, or the ones that aren't very skilled, and have them be the leaders or the captains. But you should stay away from that. You can designate a location. The second option is designating a location for assembling students into the squad formation. Number 3, you can have squad leaders. I love this because the person in the front of each line would be in front of all the squad. They can be your leaders, and I used a rotation to where the leaders for this week would lead in the fitness activities. Then for next week, they would go to the back of the line, and then the next ones in the front would come up and be leaders. It teaches those that are embarrassed and shy to come out of their shell, and it also teaches those ones that like to be the leaders that they're going to have to learn to take their turn and be quiet and let the other ones do their job. Number 4, the fourth one talks about composition of the squads can be predetermined. If you want to make sure you have strong, average, and weak students in each squad, or if you want to separate students for whatever reason, you can predetermine that. The 5th one, it's very smart and practical to use an even number of squads. That way, if you have to break the teams up or the class up into 2 equal teams or 4 equal teams, you already have them in 4 groups and you already have your teams. That's a very smart move to use. They talk about the last one is home base. An effective way to use squads is called home base. Place a number of marking spots on the floor throughout the area. So when you call home base, the captains quickly find the closest spot, and then that's their squads. They line up behind them. So that works pretty good. How are you going to know your students' names? You don't see them on a regular basis, especially with the you're just teaching 2 30-minute lessons. So they talk about an effective class management requires learning the names of the students. One approach is you could memorize 3 or 4 names per class, or per day or per period. I like the approach of asking the students their names before they perform a skill, And that way you can just say their name and then explain to them whatever you want. Uh, some people, or the previous book had suggested possibly an instant camera to take pictures, and then you could learn their names, but we know we can't do that. So we won't be able to photograph the kids unless you're using it for your own personal benefit to help you to know the kids. What type of pre and post teaching routines are you going to establish? Those children appreciate security of knowing what to do from the time they enter your instructional area, your PE area, until they leave. So if you have routines, the kids love it. But these are some issues that you might want to think about. What are you going to do about non-participation? What if you have a kid that says, oh, my tummy hurts? Are you going to require a note from the parent or from a nurse? You cannot encourage the student to participate if they do have that note. So if they do come to the PE class, you can have them sit on the bench, or chances are they might stay in the classroom with another teacher, but you can't force them to participate. What if all of a sudden during the day they say, oh, my tummy hurts? You let them sit on the bench. Hopefully they're going to see how much fun you're having, and they're going to want to come and play, and because their tummy got better. What type of routine are you going to have for entering the teaching area? Are you going to want them to enter quietly in an orderly fashion? Are you going to meet them at the door when they enter the area? Are you going to want to have them moving, running immediately? You know, Miss Erica has them get in their PE lines. That seems to work for her, which is entering and going to a designated area. Another routine you need to consider is how to start the lesson. Have them participate in an activity before discussing the content, which is our introductory activity. If you're going to start a jump rope lesson, you might want them to have free exploration. You're not going to use that term with the students. You're going to tell them, let me see what you can do with the jump rope for 1-2 minutes, and you're going to see what they all know and what they can do, and who might demo some of the jumping activities, jump rope activities that you've chosen for that lesson. How to close a lesson. You want a regular routine for closing a lesson. Miss Erica has them getting back in their PE lines or getting the line to get water. So what is your method for the students leaving the teaching area? Are you going to make them return to the PE lines like I said? Are you going to have them kneel? Are you going to have them come to you so you can do your closure? But you need them to calm down some type of way before they return to the classroom. What type of equipment procedures are you going to have in your PE? What I want you to know, they're suggesting placing the equipment around the perimeter of the teaching area so all students have easy access and they're running away from each other as opposed to one pile or box. I've also suggested to you having 3 or 4 different piles as opposed to one big pile. I like that because I found it hard to put the equipment around the perimeter. So choose some type of procedure that the students are not running to one location to get the equipment. Another routine you need to think about is dealing with behavior problems. Youngsters who misbehave during class, they need to be talked to maybe at the time or after class. It depends how serious of a behavior issue it is. If there's an appointment needed to be made with the student and or the parents after school, these are all some issues that these are all some routines or some thoughts that you need to take into consideration as far as for routines in the classroom. How can we get our students to use equipment effectively? This is another way that we find that as a teacher, how can we incorporate efficient management skills? It's all about the equipment. So if there's Teaching them where to place the equipment, yes, okay. But let's talk about what if it's small equipment, like a ball or a hoop or a beanbag? Every child, every youngster should have one. If it's large pieces of equipment, the students should not have to wait in line very long. This is where you want maybe 5 students deep. You as a teacher needs to demonstrate the proper use of equipment that's mentioned in your safety precautions, and you're going to learn as you go what are some safety issues that you may want the students to do. The students should not be holding any of the equipment in their hands. They should have them in home position whenever you're giving instructions. We know we can have them put it on the floor or the basketball between the feet or the jump ropes folded and placed around the neck. That's a different idea compared to placing it on the floor. But this will help avoid problems with the youngsters. Distributing equipment quickly so no instructional time is wasted is very important. How can you get that equipment distributed quickly? This is a very common management skill that you need in PE. Assigning squad leaders to secure and put away equipment might be an option. But again, they talk about a fast way is to put it around the perimeter. Okay, so they reinforce that again. And then once they do have the equipment, you want to explain what's required of them, what you want them to do. They shouldn't have to wait until everyone has gotten their equipment before beginning. Slowpokes or uncooperative students are going to take forever. And that's why I like just letting the kids, let me see what you can do. Even if it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, the kids are moving. And those slowpokes or those uninterested students just take a little while, but that's okay. Your job is to get the students moving.